Dahlia Scheindlin is a veteran of 5 national political campaigns in Israel. She is with us live in Tel Aviv. Okay, so thank you for taking the time to talk with us. There is now this deal on paper, right? A coalition made up of 8 political parties from the right. There's a pro-settlement group to the far left, and you also got the United Arab List. And they formed this majority with a razor-thin number of 61, one-seat majority in the Knesset. You know, I have milk in my fridge which could potentially last longer than this coalition. Are we about to see a new era of consensus building and compromise, or does this coalition last long enough to force Netanyahu out of office and then implode, if it gets that far?
Well, that is a very tough question. Just a quick correction. I used to be the person who'd worked on 5 elections, but at this point I've worked on 8 elections because we had so many over the last 2 years. And if this government doesn't hold together, it could very well be that we'll be going into a 5th election. I think there's 2 options. You know, one is that this government falls apart very quickly for the reasons that you pointed out. It has only 61 seats, just a bare majority. It just takes a few. Of course, we need an absolute majority to vote out a government once it's sworn in. But Netanyahu, as your other analyst has noted, has a great level of persuasion, and his supporters have been exerting enormous levels of pressure on the supporters of the Change Coalition already, and those parties are very ideologically disparate. It is certainly a possibility. I don't think we're heading into a brand new era of miraculous consensus building in Israel. It's just not the nature of Israeli society, and the fundamental differences between those parties is so great, primarily over issues related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and over domestic issues of particularly Israeli institutions. And we saw that one of the biggest sticking points in the negotiating process was how this government would manage the judiciary in Israel, which is an increasing source of division. Those crises will continue to come up. The question is whether they can reach small compromises and just move a little bit towards one another for the sake of some stability. It's true that they are primarily unified at this point to keep Netanyahu out, but I also think that these parties have an interest in showing that there are other leaders in Israel who can govern with some measure of stability. It doesn't have to be the chaotic leadership of Netanyahu forever.
You know, of all the images that we've seen of the past 24 hours or so, there is one which seems to stand out as being truly historic. It's this one here. And look at this. From the left to right of the screen, you have Yair Lapid there, the leader of the centrist opposition. Naftali Bennett is in the middle. We just saw him there. He's the leader of the right-wing Yamina party. And the man on the right in that earlier photograph we saw was Mansour Abbas. He's chairman of Raman, an Arab-Israeli political party. There he is there, signing that coalition agreement. Now, he leads the first Arab party in Israeli history to formally join a governing coalition. And in many ways, it seems that is being overlooked here with so much focus on Netanyahu's political future.
I don't think it's being overlooked here in Israel. It has been an extremely controversial issue. The historic roots are very sensitive in Israel. The fact that there has never been an independent Arab party in the Israeli coalition is part of the country's national identity and the self-definition as a Jewish state. However, I could go a little further back than Netanyahu, but Netanyahu himself, starting just maybe half a year ago, started talking about the idea of building a coalition with Ra'am, that party that you mentioned, the United Arab List, because he knew that he has the credibility as a right-wing leader to do so. He thought it would be a game changer. Maybe he was just saying it in order to pressure other parties to go into a coalition with him. Either way, Netanyahu still wasn't able to form a coalition, but these opposition parties capitalized on a newfound legitimacy for the idea of bringing in a party representing the Arab Palestinian citizens of Israel into a coalition. For much of this time, we assumed that Ra'am would simply support the government with its votes for that critical vote of confidence in the Knesset to swear in the government. But now it looks like they're actually part of the coalition. Although they will not hold ministerial positions, still it's an incremental but very important breakthrough towards having 20% of the population represented in the executive power in Israel.
You know, Netanyahu is this very sizable, very loyal base. What are the expectations there, and how they will react to this new unity government? How long will they remain loyal once Netanyahu is out of office? And you know, there's been speculation of some kind of January 6th type uprising at the Knesset.
Yeah, that's a very sensitive question. Netanyahu has managed to retain a fairly stalwart base of supporters that numbers around 1/4 of the electorate, which is the number of people who've supported him in all of the last 4 elections, between 24 and 27%. That is a plurality given the level of fragmentation in the Israeli system. Many of those are Netanyahu fans, but many of them are also traditional supporters of the Likud, going back historically well before Netanyahu. Likud is, of course, Netanyahu's party. So I think many of those people will continue to support the Likud simply because it's the party of their traditional support, maybe going back to their family and generations back. We don't really know what percentage would leave Likud if Netanyahu was not at the helm, but I can say that there are already lots of rumors from within the Likud about discontent. Netanyahu has been ruling for 12 years. Other younger leaders have been waiting patiently or not so patiently. Gidon Sa'ar, of course, broke away and formed his own party, which is now part of the Change Coalition. There is a possibility that the Likud will go into primaries eventually after this, if, of course, the government is established and Netanyahu heads the opposition. And I don't think that that the Likud will lose dramatic support, but it could be that Likud is headed towards a change of leadership.
Yeah, they've been down to, I think, 11 seats at one point back in 2006 with Netanyahu as leader, so we'll see what happens. But a veteran of 8 political national campaigns, 4 of them coming in the last 2 years. Thank you so much, Dahlia. Good to see you. We appreciate it.